Thank you, Professor Borun, esteemed professors, Department of Political Science, Dibrugarh University, faculty members, and esteemed participants from different colleges, research scholars, and the cultured souls present in this August house. Let me first clarify three things. Lecturing once a temperament in my youth. Now it has become almost an inseparable part of my life, inseparable part of my sadhana. Neither am I a scholar, nor do I possess scholarship. Why then this audacity on my part? I have a sense of offering anything and everything at the lotus feet of the Supreme Divine Mother. And this sense of surrender is the sole source of my strength and audacity. Today I will be discussing on IKS and the profounder Indian sense of the word jnana, but actually should have been within inverted comma the profounder Indian sense of the word jnana, because I have derived the phrase from Sri Aurobindo's writing only. The profounder Indian sense of the word jnana. We have been hearing this phrase, IKS, Indian Knowledge System, for the past 1 decade or so. And earlier, we had heard another terminology, that is to say, Indology. Is both the same, or there is radical and substantial difference between Indian knowledge system and that of the Indology? As this session is about IKS, I will be using both the language, Assamese as well as English. But why? Let me explain two occasions. First, perhaps February, March, in the month of February, March, I delivered a lecture in the Shanti Niketan. আৰু মই শান্তি নিকেতনত দেখা পাইছিলোঁ ইংৰাজীৰ প্ৰতি তেওঁলোকৰ খুব এটা বেছি আকৰ্ষণ নাই, যিটো আমাৰ ভাৰতবৰ্ষৰ অন্য ইউনিভাৰ্চিটিবিলাকত ইংৰাজীৰ প্ৰতি এতিয়াও আমাৰ এটা আকৰ্ষণ আছে। ইংৰাজীৰ there is a necessity, but to be overwhelmed with English is a different issue. মই শান্তি নিকেতনত দেখা পাইছিলোঁ তেওঁলোক ইমান ইংৰাজী ভাষাৰ প্ৰতি খুব এটা অভিভূত নহয়, বিকজ তেওঁলোকে নিজৰ মাতৃভাষাতেই নিজৰ কথা প্ৰকাশ কৰিবৰ বাবে ইচ্ছুক। এণ্ড ডেট হেজ এনকাৰেজড মি। আৰু দ্বিতীয়টো ঘটনা আজি মাত্ৰ মই 6-7 দিন আগতে শুনিছোঁ, এণ্ড আই এম অলমষ্ট অভাৰৱেলড। অসমৰ লগত জড়িত এটা কথা। আজি যদি এখন চৰকাৰে যদি কয় যে আমি আজিৰ পৰা সকলোৰে বাবে প্ৰাথমিক বিদ্যালয়ত মাতৃভাষাত শিক্ষাদান কৰাটো বাধ্যতামূলক কৰিম, মই ভাবোঁ যে অসমীয়া মানুহেই বিৰোধ কৰিব, অসমীয়া অভিজাত শ্ৰেণীটোৱে বিৰোধ কৰিব। কিয়? নানান ধৰণৰ অসুবিধা দেখুৱাব, এটা নহয়, ইট উইল বি মোৰ দেন 1000। মোৰ চাকৰি ট্ৰেন্সফাৰেবল, মই ইয়াত থাকোঁ, মোৰ উপায় নাই, নানান ধৰণৰ অজুহাত দেখুৱাব। এম আই কাৰেক্ট? ছুইডেনত এহাল অসমীয়া দম্পতি আছে, সম্ভৱতঃ নামটো মই ঠিক উপাধিটো নাজানো, মোক আজিৰ পৰা 2-4 দিন আগতে এজন ছাত্ৰই কৈছে তেওঁলোকৰ সন্তানক তেওঁলোকে ছুইডেনৰ বিদ্যালয়ত নামভৰ্তি কৰাইছে ছুইডেনৰ বিদ্যালয় কৰ্তৃপক্ষই কৈছে ফাইন বাট উই কেনট টিচ দেম ইন সুইডিছ লেংগুৱেজ আমি তেওঁলোকক ছুইডেন ভাষাত শিকাব নোৱাৰিম শিশুৰ অধিকাৰ তেওঁ মাতৃভাষাতেই শিকিব লাগিব দম্পতীহালৰ কোনো আপত্তি নাই ইংৰাজী মাধ্যমত শিকক সুইডিছ ভাষাত শিকক দম্পতীহালৰ কোনো অসুবিধা নাই ইউ কেন ভেৰিফাই ইট এইটো এই 2025 চনৰ ঘটনা কৈ আছোঁ অসমৰ এহাল দম্পতী ছুইডেনত থাকে আৰু ছুইডেনৰ বিদ্যালয় কৰ্তৃপক্ষই কি কৰিছে জানে অসমৰ পৰা অসমীয়া কিতাপ লৈ গৈছে মাত্ৰ 2জন ছাত্ৰক পঢ়ুৱাবৰ বাবে আৰু ছুইডেনত আন অসমীয়া শিক্ষক তেওঁলোকে যোগাৰ কৰি লৈছে তথাপিতো তাহাঁতক ছুইডেনত অসমীয়া ভাষাত শিকাব অন্ততঃ প্ৰাথমিক বিদ্যালয় পৰ্যন্ত আৰু আমি হোৱাট উই আৰ ডুইং হিয়াৰ ইন আছাম এহাল অসমীয়া দম্পতীৰ 2টা অসমীয়া শিশুৰ বাবে ছুইডেনৰ বিদ্যালয়ে অসমৰ পৰা অসমীয়া পাঠ্যপুথি আমদানি কৰি নিছে আৰু ছুইডেনতেই 2জন অসমীয়া শিক্ষক তেওঁলোকে বিচাৰ খোচাৰ কৰি উলিয়াইছে তেওঁলোকে কোনো পধ্যে শিশুক মাতৃভাষাৰ বাহিৰে আন ভাষাত শিক্ষা দিবলৈ নিবিচাৰে আমি IKSৰ বিষয়ে আলোচনা কৰিছোঁ সেইবাবে মই এই কথাখিনি কৈছোঁ তাৰ পিছত মই তৃতীয় এটা আপোনালোকক লেট মি কোট শ্ৰী অৰবিন্দৰ বিষয়ে যিসকলে জানে at the age of 5 he was sent to Loreto School Darjeeling and at the age of 7 he was sent to England 21 বছৰ বয়সত শ্ৰী অৰবিন্দই ভাৰতবৰ্ষলৈ ঘূৰি আহিছিল 7টা ভাষাত সিদ্ধহস্ত হৈ নট অনলি ইংলিছ গ্ৰীক লেটিন কেৱল মাত্ৰ জানিব পঢ়িব লিখিব পৰাকৈ 21 বছৰ বয়সতেই আৰু আহি সেই শ্ৰী অৰবিন্দই ভাষাৰ বিষয়ে কি কৈছিল শুনক কৈছে নাথিং হেজ ষ্টুড মোৰ ইন দি ৱে অফ ৰেপিড প্ৰগ্ৰেছ ইন ইণ্ডিয়া কৈছে ভাৰতবৰ্ষৰ প্ৰগতিৰ অন্তৰায়ৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত আন একো বস্তুৱে ইয়াতকৈ ডাঙৰ অন্তৰায় নহয় কৈছে নাথিং হেজ ষ্টুড মোৰ ইন দি ৱে অফ দি ৰেপিড প্ৰগ্ৰেছ ইন ইণ্ডিয়া নাথিং হেজ মোৰ ছাকচেছফুলি প্ৰিভেণ্টেড হাৰ চেল্ফ ফাইণ্ডিং and development under modern condition than the long overshadowing of the Indian tongues as cultural instrument by the English language. ভাৰতবৰ্ষৰ সমস্ত অধঃপতনৰ মূলত আমি যে আমাৰ নিজৰ মাতৃভাষাসমূহক আমি নিৰ্বাসিত কৰিছোঁ কি দুখত নিৰ্বাসিত কৰিছোঁ আই এম পাৰ্চনেলি নট এৱেৰ আমি কি দুখত নহয় আচলতে এটা পৰিণতি স্বৰূপে আমি 200 বছৰ গোলাম আছিলোঁ দ্যাট হেজ টু বি এডমিটেড আমি 200 বছৰ গোলাম আছিলোঁ 200 বছৰ গোলাম আছিলোঁ আমাৰ ৰন্ধে ৰন্ধে এতিয়াও গোলামীৰ ৰক্ত প্ৰবাহিত হৈছে উই আৰ ষ্টিল hypnotized by the glamour of European culture. And that is why perhaps UGC has almost imposed on the educated section of India. IKS has been imposed, deliberately, forcefully imposed. On whom? On the educated Indians. Because India is now convinced her educated sections are already alienated from India. This is the relevance, this is the secret agenda to reconnect educated Indians with their roots. And that is why UGC has deliberately imposed IKS on you. Deliberately, forcefully, knowingly on educated Indians. So, now let me define IKS then. What is IKS? As it is an evolving subject, it could be variously defined by various authors. It could be defined variously by various authors. But one definition, and that too one-liner definition, has moved me. Whether that sentence, that definition will move you or not, I am not aware. In the recently published books, jointly by 3 authors, B. Mahadevan, Binayak Rajat Bhatt, and Nagendra Pavna Aren, the title of the book is IKS Concept and Application. They have given an one-liner definition of IKS. And what is IKS according to them? They say IKS is a generic phrase. IKS is a generic phrase that practically covers everything about India. That practically covers everything about India. And in my opinion, this is not only the precise definition, in my opinion, this is the most comprehensive definition. The focus is on India. But you may eventually or you may necessarily raise a question. Why? Practically everything about India should be regarded as knowledge system. In India, knowledge is not an uncertain aspect. Knowledge is a very concrete thing. Knowledge is a very concrete thing without any ambiguity. Knowledge is a very, very concrete, precise thing. You may necessarily ask, you may necessarily raise a question, why practically everything about India should be regarded as Indian knowledge system? Because my answer is, you may agree to it or you may reject it. It is up to your wisdom. Because everything associated with India is also associated with a knowledge. Whether you can talk of Indian art, Indian philosophy, Indian religion, Indian spirituality, Indian polity, Indian culture, everything associated with India is also associated with a certain kind of knowledge. You may accept that knowledge, you may reject it. It is up to your wisdom. মোক এটা মাত্ৰ উদাহৰণ দিবলৈ দিয়ক, দুটা উদাহৰণ। এই যে আমাৰ ভাৰতবৰ্ষত আমাৰ কিছুমান ক্ৰিটিক্সে সমালোচনা কৰে যে 12টা মাহত 13টা উৎসৱ। 12টা মাহত 13টা নহয়, কিজানি 13,000 উৎসৱ ভাৰতবৰ্ষত পালিত হয়। একেবাৰে নাগালেণ্ডৰ পৰা কৰ্ণাটকলৈ, মহাৰাষ্ট্ৰৰ পৰা মণিপুৰলৈ, কাশ্মীৰৰ পৰা কন্যাকুমাৰীলৈ, অসমৰ পৰা অন্ধ্ৰপ্ৰদেশলৈ। আজিৰ দিনটোতে কিজানি ভাৰতবৰ্ষত হয়তো 5,000 উৎসৱো যদি পালিত হৈ আছে, নাথিং টু বি ছাৰপ্ৰাইজড। ৱাই? মই কওঁ, যদি আমাৰ ভাৰতবৰ্ষত ৰাজনৈতিক যিটো ধাৰা যদি পৰিৱৰ্তিত নহয় অন্ততঃ অহা 15-20 বছৰলৈ, ইন মাই অপিনিয়ন আপোনালোকৰ সমস্ত গৱেষণা, দি হোল ৰিচাৰ্চ এৰিয়া উইল বি ডমিনেটেড বাই IKS. Will be wholly dominated by IKS, whether in the science stream or whether in the humanities. যদি ৰাজনৈতিক ধাৰাটো পৰিৱৰ্তন হয়, then I cannot predict anything. এই ভাৰতবৰ্ষত এই যে হাজাৰ হাজাৰ উৎসৱ নিতৌ পালিত হৈছে, আপোনালোকে যেতিয়া গৱেষণা কৰক যিকোনো এটা উৎসৱ লৈ, যিকোনো এটা উৎসৱ, অসমৰ, অন্ধ্ৰপ্ৰদেশৰ, নাগালেণ্ডৰ, মেঘালয়ৰ, মণিপুৰৰ, এই যে তিনিফালে সাগৰ আৰু এফালে হিমালয় পৰ্বত, আমাৰ দেৱকান্ত বৰুৱাৰ ভাষাত উত্তৰে উত্তুংগগিৰি, দক্ষিণে সাগৰ, শত নদী বুকুৰে বাগৰে, পাৰে পাৰে সাজে ভাঙে কত ইতিহাস। এই যি ভূখণ্ডৰ মাজত ঈশ্বৰ নিৰ্দিষ্ট এটা ভৌগোলিক সীমাৰ মাজত, যিখন আমি অখণ্ড ভাৰতবৰ্ষ বুলি কওঁ, প্ৰতিটো উৎসৱ আপোনালোকে গৱেষণা কৰক। এই গৱেষণা, এই উৎসৱৰ অন্তৰালত 4টা তত্ত্বৰ এটা নহয় এটা পাবই, এটা নহয় এটা পাবই। ক'ৰবাত 2টাও পাব পাৰে, ক'ৰবাত 3টাও পাব পাৰে, ক'ৰবাত হয়তো এটাৰ ওপৰত প্ৰমিনেন্স ৱাজ গিভেন, কিন্তু 3টা গৌণভাৱে আছে। সেই 4টা বস্তু কি? ফাৰ্ষ্ট ওৱান ইজ জ্ঞানম। এটা যিকোনো ধৰণৰ জ্ঞান তাৰ লগত এছ'চিয়েটেড হৈ আছে, নলেজ। You may accept it, you may throw it away. It's up to your wisdom. The second element you will find, oikom, the idea of unity, homajor unity. And the third is samortham. There are many festivals which are the embodiment of our strength and samortha. Aru ketbur apuni udjapon pabo, jibur amar swatantratar hoite, swatantra freedom. Kyo? Mahariki Sri Torobindoi koise, these four are the foundations of ideal society. Gyanam, oikom, samortham, and satantram. Knowledge, unity, power, and freedom. I am not talking about ordinary society, ideal society. Adarko somajor ei saritai bhitti. Without these four, we cannot even imagine to build an ideal society. There has to be knowledge, there has to be unity, there has to be strength, and there has to be freedom behind it. তাৰ পিছত মই আৰু এটা সাধাৰণ এটা একেবাৰে সাধাৰণজন দেখা মই এটা আমাৰ ট্ৰেডিশন ৰিচুৱেলিটিৰ কথা কওঁ. You may accept it, you may throw it away. It's up to your wisdom. I'm not imposing anything. কিন্তু মই why everything about India should be regarded as India's knowledge system. And my argument is because everything associated with India is also associated with a kind of knowledge. You may accept it, you may throw it away. ভাৰতবৰ্ষত আমি বিবাহিত মহিলাসকলৰ এতিয়াও বহুতে আমি মূৰত সেন্দুৰ লওঁ. পাশ্চাত্যৰ নাৰীবাদী আন্দোলনে বা যিসকল সমালোচক আছে তেওঁলোকে কয় as if it is servitude, এটা দাসত্বৰ প্ৰতীক, a symbol of servitude, যে মোৰ যিজন হিউমেন হাজবেণ্ড মোৰ মানৱীয় স্বামীৰ প্ৰতি এইটো এটা দাসত্বৰ পৰিচয়. আমাৰ সাধাৰণ নাৰীবাদী আন্দোলনে এই ধৰণৰ যুক্তি প্ৰদৰ্শন কৰে. এণ্ড দে আৰ ফুল্লি এণ্টাইটেল টু. মই কোনো আপত্তি কৰা নাই, কাৰো স্বাধীনতাত মই হস্তক্ষেপ নকৰোঁ. কিন্তু ইয়াৰ মাজত এটা জ্ঞান তত্ত্ব অন্তৰ্নিহিত হৈ আছে. ইউ মে একচেপ্ট ইট, ইউ মে থ্ৰ' ইট এৱে. কি জ্ঞান তত্ত্ব? ভাৰতবৰ্ষই কৈছে knowingly or unknowingly we are heading towards Narayanhood. We are heading towards Narayanhood. Right now, who are we? We are portion eternal of the divine. In the Gita, verse number 7, chapter number 15, Sri Krishna says, who are you? The Mama Eva Angsha Sanatana, my portion eternal. This Jiva is not separated from me. They are my portion eternal. I am born as Nara. I have to be Narottam, and eventually I will become Narottam, Narayan. And this is the sense of the sloka uttered by Brihadaranyaka Upanishads. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamosu ma jyotirgamaya, mrittur ma amritam gamaya. This amritam gamaya is nothing but becoming Narayanhood, accomplishing Narayanhood, amritam gamaya. So right now we are Nara. One day we will become Narottam, and eventually after 50,000 births, 1 lakh births, one day I will become. It is sure. India declares. Other countries do not. India declares one day we will become Narayan. We are not separated from the Narayan. Right now we are only the portion eternal of Brahman. So we are all after Narayan, whether female or whether male. অকল গোপীবিলাকেই কৃষ্ণৰ পিছত নাছিল, অকল ৰাধাই কৃষ্ণৰ পিছত নাছিল, পুৰুষ মহিলা সকলোৱে all knowingly or unknowingly we are after জগতৰ প্ৰতি, not the human প্ৰতি. We are all after জগতৰ প্ৰতি. আৰু সেইবাবে যেতিয়া মহিলাসকলে আগৰ ভাৰতবৰ্ষত এটা সময়ত যেতিয়া শিৰত সেন্দুৰ পিন্ধিছিল, তেতিয়া মন্ত্ৰ মাতিছিল ওম কৃষ্ণায় নমঃ নিজৰ হাজবেণ্ডৰ নাম উচ্চাৰণ নকৰিছিল যেতিয়া কপালত সেন্দুৰ লৈছিল তেতিয়া উচ্চাৰণ কৰিছিল ওম কেশৱায় নমঃ যেতিয়া কণ্ঠনলীত সিন্দুৰ লৈছিল তেতিয়া মন্ত্ৰ উচ্চাৰণ কৰিছিল ওম গোবিন্দায় নমঃ যেতিয়া শাখাত সেন্দুৰ পিন্ধিছিল তেতিয়া উচ্চাৰণ কৰিছিল ওম মধুসূদনায় নমঃ আৰু যেতিয়া কাপোৰত সেন্দুৰ লগাইছিল তেতিয়া উচ্চাৰণ কৰিছিল ওম বাসুদেৱায় নমঃ মই কেৱল মাত্ৰ এই দুটা ঘটনা আপোনালোকক কৈছোঁ যে এনিথিং এণ্ড এভৰিথিং এছ'চিয়েটেড উইথ ইণ্ডিয়া ইজ অলছো এছ'চিয়েটেড উইথ এ নলেজ ইউ মে একচেপ্ট ইট ইউ মে থ্ৰ' ইট এৱে চ' দিছ ইজ IQS বাট দেন what would be its ambit? What would be its ambit? Because literature, culture, social practices, historical evidence, and other such knowledge assets available in all Indian language, as well as in all Indian dialects, not only in the major Indian language, not only in the Sanskrit, all Indian dialects. And all geographical regions. একেবাৰে মণিপুৰৰ পৰা মেঘালয়ৰ পৰা কাশ্মীৰৰ পৰা কন্যাকুমাৰীলৈকে কৈছে উইল অল টেকনিকেলি ফল আণ্ডাৰ দি এম্বিট অফ IQS. So everything about India. Why? Because everything relating to India, associating with India is also associated with a knowledge. You may accept it, you may throw it away. And then what would be time dimension? Time dimension. Whether only the past will be taken into account? No. Past, present and future. Even the future will have to be taken into consideration. So the other aspect of the issue is the time dimension. The knowledge is continuously synthesized by any society. Knowledge is not a stagnant process. It is being continuously synthesized by any society. And that is why not only the past, not only the present, even the future will have to be taken into consideration. And will all qualify to be part of the IQS. But still, we have to admit, as it is an evolving subject, it could be defined variously by various authors. Variously by various authors. And yesterday, many have been using two terminology, traditional knowledge and indigenous knowledge. IQS refers to Indian knowledge system. And indigenous knowledge system and traditional knowledge systems are integral part of integral Indian knowledge system. But IQS is not in indigenous knowledge system. IQS is a mainstream Indian knowledge system. And we want to replace Western knowledge system by Indian knowledge system. So, IQS refers to the mainstream Indian knowledge system, Bharatiya Gyan Parampara, in which indigenous knowledge, traditional knowledge, all are inseparable and indispensable part of IQS. But it is still not indigenous knowledge system, but it is Indian knowledge system. Rather, indigenous knowledge system and the traditional knowledge system are the Indian knowledge in action, Indian knowledge put into practice. So you may interpret as indigenous knowledge system the mainstream Indian knowledge put into practice, put into action. Then what is the difference between the word Indology? Indology. What is the difference with the word Indology? The first difference is Indology, also known as South Asian studies. But broadly, IQS also covers South Asian studies because by referring to IQS, we refer to Akhanda Bharat. then it will be almost Southeast Asia. But still there is fundamental difference between Indology and IKS. The first difference, IKS is a phrase coined by India herself. But Indology was not coined by India. Indology was coined by the Westerners to study South Asian studies. This is the most radical difference between these two words. IKS, a phrase coined by India herself, but Indology coined by Westerners to study South Asian studies. Second difference, Indology is strictly and precisely academic study. But IKS includes everything, academic, non-academic, anything relating to India. Anything relating to India fall under the category of IKS. India is the central point. India is the point which is focused on. And the next difference, Indology deals only with 4 aspects. And what are those 4 aspects? History, culture, language, and literature. Language, literature, history, and culture. And that's all. But IKS deals with everything relating to India. It covers practically everything Indian, because everything Indian is also associated with a knowledge, which you may accept it, you may throw it away. So Indian knowledge system has 3 words. The phrase has 3 words: Indian, knowledge, and the system. System, you know. The word Indian today I am not going to explain, but the knowledge aspect, I will be taking the knowledge aspect, and that to the profounder Indian sense of the word Gyano, not the ordinary sense of the word Gyano. I am repeating, it is the profounder Indian sense of the word Gyano. And I will be discussing this profounder Indian sense of the word Gyano from the writings of 2 authors. One from late Professor Kirit Joshi. Who is Kirit Joshi? You can find him on Google, on internet. He is widely available on internet. And in my opinion, he was the man behind NEP 2020. Though in the year 2020, he was not present with us in this physical world. Still, why I am saying, I am not going to explain. I am just giving you a hint. Because he was the educational advisor to Chief Minister Gujarat when Honorable Modi, Narendra Modi, was the Chief Minister Gujarat. He was his educational advisor, and till date he was educational advisor to the government of Gujarat. He was an IS officer of the 1954 batch, but after 2 years he resigned from the post of IS and joined Pondicherry Sri Aurobindo Ashram. But in the year 1972, the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi again forcefully made him Special Secretary Education, Government of India. And I think this much of introduction will suffice. And rest you will find enough videos of Kirit Joshi, and you can watch him on the internet. And the other from the writings of Maharishi Sri Aurobindo. But before that, let me first I will be dealing what is information, what is knowledge, and what is wisdom in the light of late Professor Kirit Joshi. We always talk that information is not knowledge. But what is information? What is knowledge? We also say wisdom is not knowledge. Knowledge and wisdom are also different. But what is wisdom? What is knowledge? What is information? I am personally not aware if somebody has attempted to explain knowledge and attempted to distinguish between information, knowledge, and wisdom. But before that, let me quote few quotations. Let me quote few quotations. Let me quote few quotations. Sri Aurobindo once said, I will not explain, I will only quote him. He says, the capital period of my intellectual development was when I could see clearly that what the intellect says may be correct or not correct. That what the intellect justifies is true and its opposite also is true. I never admitted a truth in the mind without simultaneously keeping it open to the contrary of it. And the first result was that the pastries of the intellect was gone. The pastries of the intellect was gone. And then let me quote another quotation from Sri Aurobindo's writing. He says, the system prevailing in our universities is one which ignores the psychology of man. This is the first defect of 21st century modern scientific education. That this education is dealing with a psychological being. They are not dealing with animal. The modern education is dealing with psychological being, yet they ignore the psychology of man. This is the first defect of modern scientific education. And then he says, what the system is doing, system prevailing in the universities, loads the mind laboriously. With what? With numerous packets of information. And by the methods used in this loading process, what university is doing for us, he says damages or atrophies. Damages শব্দটোৰ অৰ্থ আমি জানো, atrophies, atrophy শব্দৰ পৰা atrophies হৈছে verb, third person singular number. Atrophy মানে হ'ল আমাৰ ভিতৰৰ যিবোৰ ফেকাল্টি আছে, এই ফেকাল্টিবোৰক বিবৰ্তনৰ বাবে অনুপযুক্ত কৰি পেলাইছে কোনে? আধুনিক বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়ৰ লোডিং প্ৰসেস অফ ইনফৰমেশ্যন। যেনেকৈ আমি ট্ৰাক এখনত বস্তু লোড কৰিলে কি হয়? যেতিয়া বেছি লোড কৰোঁ ট্ৰাকখন ভাঙি যায়, ডেমেজ হয়। কৈছে দিছ ভেৰি লোডিং প্ৰসেস, প্ৰিভেলেণ্ট লোডিং প্ৰসেস অফ ইনফৰমেশ্যন অফ modern university damages or atrophies the faculties and instrument by which man assimilates, by which man creates, by which man grows in intellect, manhood and energy. This is the system which is teaching us. They are damaging our faculties and instrument by which I grow in intellect, energy and manhood, by which I assimilate and I create. This is the contribution of modern universities. Then he says information is cannot be the foundation of intelligence. Information cannot be the foundation of intelligence. It can only be part of material. It can only be part of material out of which the knower builds knowledge, the starting point, the nucleus of fresh discovery and enlarged creation. So information is only the starting point. It is not the foundation of intelligence. Then he says, acquiring of information. Acquiring of information is only one and not the chief of the means and necessities of education. It is only one necessity, but not the chief of the means and necessities of education. Tenhole shiক্ষাৰ main necessity ki? Because central aim is the building of the powers of the human mind and spirit. Building of the human mind and spirit. Why? Why we are to build human mind and spirit? Because he says, the evoking of knowledge and will by building of human powers of mind, he says it is the formation, as I would prefer to view it, evoking of knowledge, not the acquiring of knowledge. Knowledge is not an outside-inside process. Knowledge is an inside-outside process. That is why knowledge is to be evoked. Knowledge is not to be acquired from market, from encyclopedia. Knowledge is to be evoked from within. Knowledge is to be evoked from within. The evoking of knowledge and will and of the power. So power has to be evoked, will has to be evoked, and knowledge has to be evoked. Not the information, chief and central necessities of education, but the evoking of knowledge, evoking of will, and evoking of power. Why we are to evoke knowledge, power, and will? Because to use knowledge, character, and culture. That at least, if no more. And then one of his disciple, and it is the greatest knowledge of India. You may accept it, you may throw it away. But the modern world has now accepted. It is the greatest knowledge. Indian knowledge system, you have to admit, or you may accept it, you may throw it away. But it is the most fundamental thing about Indian knowledge system. Only India says knowledge is within. All knowledge, whether knowledge relating to chemistry, whether knowledge relating to physics, knowledge relating to art, sculpture, architecture, literature, language, all knowledge is within. You may accept it, you may throw it away. But now, in the year 1996, UNESCO has accepted this maxim, this declaration. By how? You can search on Google. During the last decade, last century rather, UNESCO has published 2 documents on education. One in the year 1972, and the latest document was published in the year 1996 under the chairmanship of Jacques Delors. You will be astonished. Do you know what is the very title of the report? What India has been uttering since millennium. Now UNESCO in the year 1996, only 30 years ago, UNESCO says, learning the treasure within. Learning the treasure within. This is their title, and published in the 1996 only. And therefore, one of the disciples of Sri Aurobindo, Nalinikanta Gupta, says, all knowledge is within you. All knowledge is within you. Here he is differentiating between the role of knowledge and information. How information helps me, and what is the role of my inner world. He says all knowledge is within you. Information you get from outside. Information you get from outside. But the understanding of it, is it not from within? You can get information from outside, but understanding is always from within. And then he says, the information from outside gives you dead matter. It is dead matter. What puts life into it? Into this dead matter? What puts light into it? It is your own inner light. So information getting from outside is only dead material. Who puts life into it? Who puts light into it? It is your own inner light. So understanding is always from within. Then what is then information, knowledge, and wisdom? What is information and what is knowledge and what is wisdom? And this is from the writings of Kirit Joshi, late Professor Kirit Joshi. মোৰ সৌভাগ্য হৈছিল মই আজিৰ পৰা 10 বছৰমান আগতে কিৰিট যোশীৰ চৰণ স্পৰ্শ কৰাৰ মোৰ সৌভাগ্য হৈছিল. He says it is widely acknowledged that there is distinction between information and knowledge. But what is the distinction? We do not know. I think no dictionary has explained so far the distinction between information and knowledge. He says, what is then information? He says, information consists of any article or any fact that is presented to your awareness and you have grasped it as such. Without any context, without any interrelation, nothing. Apunak kole ikhon pahar. Apuni kolo hoy niki pahar. Okay, this is pahar. But what is pahar? What is the difference between river? নদী আৰু পাহাৰৰ মাজত কি পাৰ্থক্য? কিয় আপোনাক পাহাৰৰ বিষয়ে তেওঁ ক'লে? No context. Just presentation of fact to your awareness and you have grasped it as such. Then it is only information. It is not knowledge. So presentation of article that is presented to your awareness and you have grasped it as such. But when it will be knowledge? So while knowledge implies awareness of fact again, but presented in the context, presented in their interrelationship, presented in their significance, presented in their meanings, and presented with intellectual and critical reflection thereon. Then only it will be knowledge. এতিয়া আমি ৰাজনীতি বিজ্ঞানৰ কথা শুনিলেই জাতীয়তাবাদ নেশন আপোনালোক যেহেতু ৰাজনৈতিক বিজ্ঞানৰ মানুহ ৰাজনৈতিক বিজ্ঞানত আমি প্লেটোৰ ৰাজনীতিৰ সূত্ৰ পঢ়ো প্লেটোৱে কৈছে ফিলছফাৰসকলে দেশ শাসন কৰা উচিত মোৰ আগত যেতিয়া অকল এই কথাখিনি কোৱা হ'ব without any context then it is mere information. কিন্তু যেতিয়া মোৰ আগত প্লেটোৰ পলিটিক্যাল থিওৰিৰ লগত the theory provided by Sri Aurobindo and it will be presented to my awareness with context in their significance, then only it will be knowledge. But this knowledge in India is called intellectual knowledge. Intellectual knowledge. And this intellectual knowledge India recognizes. First thing to be noted. So first one is information. The second is the information. Both are awareness of facts. But awareness of facts and grasping of it as such is information. But awareness of facts in their interrelationship, in their context, in their significance and in their meaning, and also intellectual and critical reflection thereon, then it will be called knowledge. But in Indian knowledge system, it you have to put an adjective before the word knowledge. It is intellectual knowledge, not the real knowledge. Not the real knowledge, but it is the intellectual knowledge. And India accepts it. India recognizes this intellectual knowledge. Not that India does not recognize it. India recognizes it. But now, knowledge in the Indian context, in Indian tradition. মই প্ৰথমতে আপোনালোকক শ্ৰী অৰবিন্দৰ ইণ্টেলেকচুৱেলিটি ইণ্টেলেক্ট সম্বন্ধে মই আপোনালোকক এটা কথা আপোনালোকক কৈছিলোঁ কি কৈছিলোঁ মই এনেই কোৱা নাই ইয়াৰ কনটেক্সটৰ লগত জড়িত কাৰণে কৈছোঁ তেওঁ কি কৈছিলে the capital period of my intellectual development was when I could see clearly that what the intellect says may be correct or not correct. That what the intellect justifies is true and its opposite also is true. I never admitted a truth in the mind without simultaneously keeping it open to the contrary of it. And the first result was that the prestige of the intellect was gone. তাৰমানে ভাৰতবৰ্ষত real knowledgeৰ বাবে intellectuality has no role to play. মই এনেই কোৱা নাই এই কথাটো আৰু কিৰিট যোশী কৈছে in our Indian tradition the word knowledge is applied to a state, not any intellectual gathering of information. In Indian tradition, knowledge is applied to a state of your being. It is applied to a state, and that lies beyond the intellectual activity of the mind. Beyond the intellectual activity of the mind. You are surprised if something is beyond the intellectual activity of the mind, then how knowledge can be evoked, how knowledge can be acquired. There are higher faculties than that of intellect. India recognizes. Not only India recognizes, there is pedagogy, how to develop greater power than that of intellectuality, which is called intuition. Not intellectuality, but the intuition, intuitive mind. Because one is ordinary mind. Above ordinary mind, we have a higher mind. Above higher mind, there is an illumined mind. Above illumined mind, there is an intuitive mind. Above intuitive mind, there is a over mind. And even above, there is a super mind. And in Indian tradition, it is said there are five kosas with which we are built. First is Annamaya kosa, that is to say physical seat. Annamaya kosa. Second is Pranamaya kosa, that is the emotional being, emotional seat. Third higher state is Manomaya kosa, the mental seat. And the fourth is called Vijnanamaya kosha. That is the supramental. It is beyond mind. Vijnanamaya kosha. And above Vijnanamaya, there is the highest seat, which is called Anandamaya seat. Anandamaya seat. So, the first characteristics of the profounder meaning of the knowledge in Indian sense, it is something beyond intellectual state of your mind. That is the first point to be noted. In order to qualify certain thing, in order to be qualified certain thing, knowledge in Indian profounder sense, not in the ordinary sense. Ordinary sense is the intellectual knowledge which I have just explained. But the profounder, if you are looking after the profounder sense of the word knowledge, then it is something beyond intellectual activity of the mind. But what does it mean? What does it mean? Something beyond intellectual state of the mind. What does it mean? It means a luminous growth. It means a luminous growth into the higher state of being. And what is the higher state of being? Now you are assistant professor. One day you will be elevated to associate professorship. A higher growth. But this is not luminous growth. It is a growth in the manifestation. But I have to inwardly elevate myself, my being, because I start from the lower strata, lower level, that is to say, Annamaya Kosha, physical seat. I am a physical minded mind. I am a physical body. From that, I have to promote, I have to elevate myself to the level of emotional being. After that, I have to elevate myself to the level of mental being. Then to the level of Vijnanamaya Kosha. Then the highest is the Anandamaya Kosha. Yes, we may require 50,000 births. 50,000 births, 1 lakh births. But the second characteristics of the knowledge in the profounder Indian sense, knowledge then means a luminous growth into the higher state of being. You are no longer yesterday's man. You are a new man. New man, a luminous growth has taken place. You have grown into something which is luminous. Luminous. And how? By the outshining of the light of the integral reality. By the outshining of the light of the integral reality. মই এটা সাধারণ উদাহরণ দিছো একেবারে কমন উদাহরণ why knowledge is a luminous growth into the higher state of being ধৰক এজন 10 বছৰীয়া লৰা খুব এটা ওয়াইজ কাম কৰিছে আমাৰ ঘৰৰ আইতাহতে আমি কওঁ লৰাজন বৰ জ্ঞানী দেই কিয় তাক জ্ঞানী বুলি কৈছো because he has grown. Perhaps it seems he has grown himself into a higher state of being. That is why he is doing a work, doing like a wise man. And that is why he is Jnani. Not because of he has accumulated certain information, certain intellectual information. Can without growing into the luminous growth, I can be a great scientist. এজন ধৰ্ষণকাৰী ভাল বিজ্ঞানী হ'ব নোৱাৰিব নেকি বহুত হৈছে তেনেকুৱা আপোনালোকে ক'ব পাৰে মোৰ এইটো মনৰ ধাৰণা অম্বিকাগিৰিয়ে অসমত লিখি থৈ গৈছে ভিতৰত পুহি দুষ্ট পিখাচ বাহিৰত তাকে মোহিনী কলাৰ ছবি অৰ্থাৎ বাহিৰত মই মোহিনী কলাৰ মানুহক মুগ্ধ কৰিব পৰা এখন ছবি আঁকিছো মই কোৱা নাই অম্বিকাগিৰিয়ে কৈ গৈছে যে ভিতৰত পুহি দুষ্ট পিখাচ তাৰ মানে কি হি ইজ নট জ্ঞানী তেওঁৰ হাতত টেলেণ্ট আছে ইণ্টেলেকচুৱেল কেপেবিলিটি আছে বাট হি ইজ নট এ মেন অফ জ্ঞান হি ইজ জ্ঞানী কাৰণ জ্ঞানী হ'ব লাগিলে ইট ইজ সামথিং বিয়ণ্ড ইণ্টেলেকচুৱেল ষ্টেট অফ মাইণ্ড ইউ হেভ টু গ্ৰ' ইয়ৰ চেল্ফ ইউ হেভ টু বি গ্ৰ'ন ইনটু এ হায়াৰ ষ্টেট অফ বিং ঠিক তেনেকৈ ধৰক আজি ধৰক ইয়াতে আপোনালোকৰ কাৰোবাৰ খুব ভোকাতুৰ হৈ আছে ধৰি লওক কাল্পনিকভাৱে ইয়াত সন্মুখত ধৰক কাৰোবাৰ বাবে এখন খাদ্যৰ এখন আপোনাৰ প্ৰিয় খাদ্যৰ এখন প্লেট সজাই থোৱা আছে আপোনাৰ ভোক লাগিল বুলিয়েই আপুনি তাৰ পৰা দৌৰি আহি সেই বস্তুখিনি নাখায় because to that extent you have become knowledgeable you have become wise you have grown into a luminous growth কিন্তু এটা কুকুৰে যদি কুকুৰটো ভোকাতুৰ হৈ থাকে আৰু কুকুৰটোৰ সন্মুখত যদি ভালকৈ সজাই থোৱা এটা খাদ্যৰ তালিকা থাকে উইদাউট কেয়াৰিং ফৰ এনিথিং হি লগে লগে খাব বিকজ হি ইজ নট নলেজেবল হি হেজ নট গ্ৰ'ন ইন টু দি লিউমেনিয়াছ গ্ৰ'থ চ' দিছ ইজ দি মিনিং অফ গ্ৰ'য়িং ইন টু দি লিউমেনিয়াছ গ্ৰ'থ এণ্ড ইন অৰ্ডাৰ টু কোৱালিফাই সামথিং নলেজ in the Indian profounder sense, it has to be a luminous growth into the higher state of being. So this is the second characteristics of the knowledge in Indian tradition. And the third characteristics, knowledge also have to be a light. Knowledge also have to be a light. Light for what purpose? Kirit Joshi writes, knowledge is the light by which we grow into our true being. We grow into our true being. True being? What is this true being? Another Indian knowledge system, your mind, your vital, your emotional being, your pran, your body is not you. They are all weapon. They are all instrument. I am not my mind. I am not my body. I am not my prana. This sharira, mano and prana are the instrument of a being. And what is that being? মই প্ৰথমতে যেটো কৈছিলো কৃষ্ণই আমাক কি বুলি কৈছে গীতাত, you are the portion eternal, mama eva angsha sanatana, which is called in Indian terminology jivatma. I am a jivatma. I am an atma. Atma is my true being. I am a soul, immortal soul. আৰু সেইভাবে শ্ৰী অৰবিন্দৰ তেওঁৰ এখাৰি বাক্য আছে, whether I die or live, I am always. Whether I die or live, I am always. Growing in mind, growing in prana, growing in sharira is called growth in the becoming, not in the being. So something, in order to qualify as knowledge, it has to be a light. And what is the purpose of this light? By which we grow into our true being. Not the knowledge by which we increase our information and intellectual riches. So these are the three characteristics. Jodi kiba eta bostu gyan hobo lage bharatiyo dristit, it has to lie beyond the intellectual activity of the mind, because mind is not the possessor of knowledge. Mind is not the source of knowledge. Mind only seeks knowledge. Intellect is mind's instrument only. Mind does not possess knowledge. Mind is not the source of knowledge. Indian knowledge system advocates soul is the source of all knowledge. Soul is the source of all knowledge. You may accept it, you may throw it away. That is up to your wisdom. So in order to be knowledge in Indian context, it has to lie beyond intellectual state of mind. Number two, it has to be a luminous growth into the higher state of being. And number three, in order something in order to qualify as knowledge, it has to be a light, and that light has to help me to grow so that I can grow into my true being. So luminous growth into the higher state of being, it was upward, and second one is inward. So to grow into something which is within me, and luminous growth in the higher state of mind, going above. That is to say, if you do not take the instance of this Annamoya Kosha, Pranamoya Kosha, Manomoya, Vijnanamoya and Anandamoya Kosha, you can take the example of from higher mind, from the ordinary mind to, you have to elevate yourself to higher mind. From higher mind to illumined mind, then illumined mind to intuitive mind, then intuitive mind to over mind, and then to super mind. This is what is called luminous growth in the higher state of being. But to grow in the true being means to grow in my soul. To grow in my soul. So one is inward process, one is upward process. And the first thing is beyond intellectual state of mind. But as I have already explained, that does not mean that Indian tradition admits that there are different kinds of knowledge. Scientific knowledge, psychological knowledge, philosophical knowledge, ethical knowledge, aesthetic knowledge, worldly knowledge, and practical knowledge. Indian culture admits. But it is emphasized that this form of knowledge also help us to grow. Not only the real knowledge, which helps us to grow into the higher state of being, into the true being of myself, but this intellectual knowledge also helps me to grow. India admits, but not in the being, but in the becoming. Through intellectual knowledge, you can grow mentally, you can grow physically, you can grow emotionally. This is another thing about the knowledge. Then there is another thing, important thing. It is further underlined that these forms of knowledge too can be used as aids to real knowledge. This intellectual knowledge can be used as an aid to real knowledge. But how? India has the pedagogy. How intellectual knowledge can be used as an aid to real knowledge. So India does not reject anything. But the real knowledge is that which is a secret to the mind. This is the key point. Real knowledge is secret to the mind, of which minds only gets reflection, but which lives in the spirit. So mind only gets the reflection of knowledge and truth, but truth dwells in the spirit. Mind gets the reflection, mind seeks the truth, mind seeks the knowledge. So we have now got three types of things. One is information, another one is intellectual knowledge, and the third one is real knowledge. Now then, what is wisdom? This real knowledge is called wisdom. So then you can explain as one is information, then the intellectual knowledge, then the wisdom. Because real knowledge is called wisdom. So, or you may explain it as knowledge in Indian tradition. Knowledge in the profounder sense of the Indian word jnana means the real knowledge, which is called in India as the wisdom. You have to reborn. You have to reborn. আৰু এই কথাটো যদি মই আপোনালোকক বুজাব বিচাৰো আৰু এটা কথা, মাত্ৰ আপুনি এখাৰী বাক্যৰে জ্যোতি প্ৰসাদৰ ৰূপান্তৰেহে জগত ধুনীয়া কৰে এই মোৰ গায়ত্ৰী মন্ত্ৰ. So in order to become wise, you have to transform yourself. আপুনি নিজক ৰূপান্তৰিত কৰিব লাগিব. আকৌ ৰূপ কৰে আৰু এটা কথা কি কৈছিল, তোৰে মোৰে আলু কৰে যাত্ৰা আমি পালো জীৱনৰ অৰ্থ অভিনৱ. What is this জীৱনৰ অৰ্থ অভিনৱ? What is this আলোকৰ যাত্ৰা? মই প্ৰথমতে যিটো বৃহদাৰণ্যক উপনিষদৰ মন্ত্ৰ ক'লো, it is the beautiful Assamese rendering of the Upanishadic slok uttered in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishads. Asatu ma sadgamaya, tamasu ma jyotirgamaya, mrittur ma amritam gamaya. So rupantore he jagat dhuniya kore e mur gayatri mantra. তোৰে মোৰে আলু কৰে যাত্ৰা আমি পালো জীৱনৰ অৰ্থ অভিনৱ. This জীৱনৰ অৰ্থ অভিনৱ is the becoming অমৃতম গময়. মৃত্যুৰ মা অমৃতম গময়. So in order to become wise, you have to be reborn. Biological birth is not sufficient, insufficient. So by intellectual knowledge, you can increase your information and your intellectual riches, but you cannot grow in your true being. You cannot grow into the higher state of your being. You can grow only in the becoming. Becoming means growing mentally, growing physically, growing vitally, growing emotionally. But another important thing, and my time is almost over, so real knowledge is called important. But what is important? What is the research area in this field? India says, let Professor Kirit Joshi declares, I am not going to explain the exact procedure. It is up to your research. In India, we have pedagogy. He emphatically states, we have the pedagogy. Pedagogy for what? By means of which learning to know can gradually be transformed. So learning to means mere information. So information gathering, that is to say, learning to know can be transformed into what? Into develop intellectual knowledge. And then intellectual knowledge can be matured into wisdom. The whole process is known to India. India has the pedagogy. And that is why IKS has been imposed on you. To explore that pedagogy. Not the subject matter, but the pedagogy which is important. By which information can be transformed into intellectual knowledge, and then intellectual knowledge can be transformed into wisdom. India has the pedagogy. And even after NEP 2020, if I am to believe in Kirit Joshi, still we are far away to having a proper national education. Why? Let me quote him. He says, this pedagogy needs to be brought into the forefront. This pedagogy. Which pedagogy? By which information can be transformed into intellectual knowledge, then intellectual knowledge can be transformed into wisdom. This pedagogy, this is the challenge before us. This is the national agenda. This pedagogy needs to be brought into the forefront. This is the first task before us. And applied in our dealings. Dealings with what? Dealings with students and subjects. Dealings with our students and subjects. Subjects of studies. And with the methods of teachings and learning. So he has spoken about three things. This pedagogy needs to be brought into the forefront. This pedagogy has to be applied in dealings with students and subjects of studies. And number third, has to be applied with the methods of teachings and learning. Because it is only when this task is undertaken that we should be entitled to claim that we have begun to impart to our system of education what can be called its true national character. Otherwise not. Ami alop Ingraji buronjit koi Bharator buronji besikoi porilu. It is welcome step. But what matters most is the pedagogy. গতিকে মই আৰু অলপমান কম বুলি ভাবিছিলোঁ কিন্তু মোৰ সময়ে মোক পাৰমিট নকৰিলে গতিকে মই ইয়াতেই সামৰিছোঁ if you want to interact we can interact for few minutes thank you and namaskar to all any question anything
Thank you, sir, for your insightful lecture. As you have heard, basically,
you can share also with points where you are not agreeing to me, because that will be also helpful for me. If you do not agree to what I have spoken, that thing also I must know. Yes.
I just wanted to know more about, your understanding of pedagogy. The understanding of pedagogy in
Very good question. Yes, let me.
Because of the time.
Yes. Why a very vital question? Very vital question. Let me first. I'll be telling you the very basic foundations of Indian pedagogy. Basic foundations of Indian pedagogy. তাৰ আগতে মই আপোনালোকক এটা মই প্ৰশ্ন কৰি ল'ব বিচাৰিছোঁ আপোনালোক ইয়াত সকলোৱে ক্লাছৰুমত শিক্ষাদান কৰে আপোনালোকৰ কোনোবা ছাত্ৰই 70 পায় কোনোবাই 90 পায় কোনোবাই 100 পায় কোনোবাই 30 পায় কোনোবাই ফেল কৰে কোনোবাই 40 পায় why this happens যিজনে 90 পাইছে তাৰ কাৰণে যদি কোনোবাই খুদে who is to be credited নিশ্চয় আপোনালোকে ক্ৰেডিট ল'ব যে because I taught him ভাল কথা আপোনালোকে 90 পাইছে আপোনালোকক কৃতিত্ব দিয়াৰ প্ৰয়োজন কিন্তু 30 পোৱাজনৰ দায়িত্ব কাৰ যদি আপোনালোকৰ বিৰুদ্ধে কালি পৰহি যদি সুপ্ৰিম কোৰ্টৰ মহামান্য প্ৰধান বিচাৰপতিয়ে এটা চৌমটো কেছ লয় যে 90 পোৱাসকলক শিক্ষকসকলে স্বজনপ্ৰীতি কৰে নেপোটিজম কৰে আৰু 30 পোৱাসকলক নেগলেক্ট কৰে what would be your defense আপোনালোকে কি ক'ব তেতিয়া নে আপোনালোকে অভিযুক্তি স্বীকাৰ কৰি ল'ব যে হয় আমি ভাল ছাত্ৰক আমি বেছি মৰম কৰোঁ বেছি নজৰ দিওঁ আৰু যিবিলাক ছাত্ৰ হোপলেছ তাহাঁতক আমি ইমান গুৰুত্ব নিদিওঁ এই অভিযোগটো আপোনালোকে স্বীকাৰ কৰি ল'ব নে আপোনালোকে ডিফেণ্ড কৰিব নিশ্চয় ডিফেণ্ড কৰিব বাট হোৱাট ইজ ইয়ৰ ৱেপন মই সেই ৱেপনটো দি যাব বিচাৰিছোঁ আজিৰ পৰা অন্ততঃ আপোনালোকে বুকু ফিন্দাই ক'ব পাৰিব যে কিয় এজনে 30 পায় কিয় এজনে 90 পায় আৰু তাৰ বাবে why teachers are not responsible is the modern pedagogy Kirit Joshi says brother he says this thing in the light of Sri Aurobindo's writing only a basic foundations of Indian pedagogy is the perception that what is that perception there is in the heart of every thinking and living being you note the word thinking and living being animals are also living being but they are not thinking being by this sentence it is being referred to human being only homo sapiens only because we are thinking as well as living being so what is within our heart in the heart of every thinking and living being a growing bud of knowledge and perfection there is a growing bud of knowledge and perfection within our heart how it will open এই যে জ্ঞান আৰু পূৰ্ণতাৰ দুটা মুকুল আমাৰ ভিতৰত থাকে আপোনালোকে যে লেকচাৰ দিয়ে তাৰ কেমিষ্ট্ৰিটো কি কিয় লেকচাৰ দিলে ল'ৰা ছোৱালীয়ে বুজি পায় লেকচাৰৰ বাহিৰেতো বেলেগ নকৰোঁ আমি একো কিন্তু লেকচাৰ দিয়াৰ পিছতো কিছুমানে বুজি নাপায় কৈছে এই যিটো বৰ্ধিষ্ণু মুকুল গ্ৰয়িং বাড কৈছে in two ways it can open either gradually or swiftly we can understand but swiftly হঠাৎ দ্ৰুতগতিত কাৰ হ'ব পাৰে বহু উদাহৰণ আছে পৃথিৱীত মই ইয়াত কোনোবা একচুৱেলি সংস্কৃত সাহিত্যৰ যদি মানুহ থাকিলেহেঁতেন তেনেহ'লে জানিলেহেঁতেন ভাৰতবৰ্ষত এজন মহামূৰ্খ আছিলে আৰু তেওঁ কোনো পৌৰাণিক ফিগাৰ নহয় নন এণ্টিটি নহয় হি ইজ এ ভেৰি মাছ ছলিড হিষ্টৰিকেল ফিগাৰ তেওঁ এনেকুৱা মূৰ্খ আছিল যে তেওঁ গছৰ ওপৰত উঠি তলত তেওঁ ডাল কাটি আছিল কাৰ কথা কৈছোঁ বাৰু কোনোবাই গেছ কৰিব পাৰিছে নেকি কোন yes Kalidas was fool to that extent and he was made knowledgeable within a moment by the grace of the divine mother ইউ কেন বিলিভ ইট অৰ ইউ কেন থ্ৰ' ইট এৱে সেইবাবেই কৈছে দি বেচিক পেডাগজি এই প্ৰবেবিলিটিটো অলৱেজ আছে আজি আপুনি যিজনক একেবাৰে মূৰ্খ বুলি ভাবিছে তেওঁৰ যদি ভিতৰত সেই বৰ্ধিষ্ণু মুকুলটো যদি হঠাৎ অপেন হৈ যায় গ্ৰেজুৱেলি অপেন হৈ যোৱা এজনতকৈও হি কেন বি এনাডাৰ কালিদাস কিন্তু নৰ্মেল আমাৰ দৰে ইভলিউশ্যনাৰী বিইঙৰ কাৰণে গ্ৰেজুৱেলি অপেন হয় বাট হাউ Kirit Joshi says, or the Indian pedagogy says, when the right word is heard. Not the word, but the right word is heard. Right word is heard. আপোনালোকে কলেজত শ্ৰেণীকোঠাত যে লেকচাৰ দিয়ে এই লেকচাৰ is being heard by your student. So the first process of Indian pedagogy, there are other things also. First thing is শ্ৰৱণ আৰু সেইবাবেই সংস্কৃত সাহিত্যত সংস্কৃত ভাষাত শব্দৰ উচ্চাৰণৰ ওপৰত গুৰুত্ব দিয়ে শব্দটো যদি প্ৰপাৰ নহয় আপোনাৰ ছাত্ৰৰ সেই মুকুলটো কেতিয়াও প্ৰস্ফুটিত নহয় ইট হেজ টু বি এ ৰাইট ৱৰ্ড বাট শ্ৰৱণ ইজ নট সাফিচিয়েণ্ট শ্ৰৱণ হেজ টু বি ফলোড বাই মনন মিনছ ৰিফ্লেকশ্যন Again, manana has to be followed by nididhyasana. Nididhyasana by means deep meditation. But these two processes are yet to be made part of modern pedagogy. Manana and the meditation, nididhyasana. So you are dealing with only one process of pedagogy, that is to say shravana, hearing. So hearing has to be followed by reflection. Again, reflection has to be followed by deep meditation. Shravana, manana, nididhyasana. And that is why Sri Aurobindo says, what is education? What is education? He says education is not about He says education, information is not education, but what is education, he says? He says, but the acquiring of various kinds of information is only one and not the chief of the means and necessities of education. Its central aim is the building of the powers of human mind and spirit. So, যেতিয়া আপোনালোকৰ কাৰণে যদি অহা 5 বছৰতো যদি সুপ্ৰিম কোৰ্টে যদি আপোনালোকৰ বিৰুদ্ধে সমতো কেছ কৰে আপোনালোকে ক'ব যে উই আৰ হ্যান্ডিক্যাপ বিকজ উই আৰ টিচিং আৱাৰ ষ্টুডেণ্ট অনলি উইথ দি ওৱান পাৰ্ট অফ দি 3 প্ৰচেছেছ that is to say শ্ৰৱণ so manana and the nididhyasana reflection and meditation are yet to be made part of modern scientific educational pedagogy across the globe. এতিয়া তেনেহ'লে মোক আপোনালোকে ক'ব পাৰে যে কেনেকৈ কিছুমানে বুজি আছে through evolutionary process because there is a soul within you. সোলটোৱে যিমান সুযোগ পাইছে আপোনাৰ মনন শক্তি আপোনাৰ নিদিধ্যাসনৰ শক্তি সোলটোৱে আপোনাক সহায় কৰি থাকে আৰু এই কথা আটাইতকৈ বেছি স্পষ্টভাৱে কোনে কৈছে শ্ৰীকৃষ্ণই গীতাত কৈছে এটা দুটা নহয় শ্ৰীকৃষ্ণ একেবাৰে অহংকাৰী হৈ পেলাই কৈছে কোনে তোমালোকক শিকায় মই শিকাওঁ বুলি কৈছে মই তোমালোকৰ ভিতৰত থাকো তোমালোকৰ হৃদয়ৰ ভিতৰত থাকি তোমালোকৰ অজ্ঞান নাশ কৰো not by your teacher I am the greatest teacher আৰু সেইভাবে একেবাৰে শেষত এতিয়া বুজিবৰ বাবে মই বিবেকানন্দৰ এটা কথা which has been acknowledged by the UNESCO জেক্স ডলাৰ্ছে নিজৰ প্ৰতিবেদনত লাৰ্নিং টু লাৰ্ন তাত সেই কথাটো উল্লেখ কৰিছে তেওঁ ভাৰতবৰ্ষ এই যে নিদিধ্যাসন ইজ নাথিং বাট ডিপ কনচেন্ট্ৰেশ্যন এইবিলাকৰ নো হাউ ইণ্ডিয়াত আছে অকল ওৱান ডিসিপ্লিন নহয় দেয়াৰ আৰ 1000 ডিসিপ্লিনস কিন্তু যদি আমি এইবোৰ ব্যৱহাৰ নকৰো এইবোৰ এদিন পৃথিৱীৰ পৰা একেবাৰে নোহোৱা হৈ যাব মই একেবাৰে শেষত যেটো আপোনালোকে বুজিবৰ বাবে এই গুটেইখিনি কথা বিবেকানন্দই কৈছে কনসেন্ট্ৰেশ্যন ইজ দি কি টু অল নলেজেস কনচেনট্ৰেশ্যন ইজ দি কি টু অল নলেজেছ। এইটো বিবেকানন্দ শ্ৰী অৰবিন্দই কোৱা কথা। বেদ, উপনিষদ, গীতা, ব্ৰহ্মসূত্ৰ, ইণ্ডিয়াৰ নলেজ ছিষ্টেমৰ কথাখিনিকে তেওঁলোকে আধুনিক ভাষাত কৈছে। এয়া গীতাৰ কথা, এয়া উপনিষদৰ কথা, আধুনিক ভাষাত কেৱল মাত্ৰ বিবেকানন্দ শ্ৰী অৰবিন্দই আমাক সেই কথাখিনি কৈছে। কনচেনট্ৰেশ্যন ইজ দি কি টু অল নলেজেছ। আৰু তেওঁ আনকি এই বুলি কৈছিল যে মোক যদি আকৌ এইবাৰ মহাবিদ্যালয়লৈ পঠোৱা হয়, দিছ টাইম আই উইল নট ষ্টাডি এনি ছাবজেক্ট, I will only learn how to concentrate, how to concentrate, how to concentrate. And after that, I will learn each and every subject of the world with the power of concentration. Thank you and namaskar to all. এইটো বন্ধ কৰি দিওঁ। এইটো দিয়াই নাছিল নেকি? এইটো বন্ধ কৰি দিলে হ'ল।